My wife had kidney stones.
Mr. Chair, we are live and the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, March 19th. It's 7:30 approximately, and we have a variance or an appeal up in front of us. So having called the meeting to order, we can proceed directly with the appeal from Amar Youssef. So if you want to, I'll generally defer to Hank for the process here, but if you want to start with the introduction, a little bit about what you're here looking for. I mean, we've all got our homework in our manila envelopes, but it's a chance to discuss.
Oh, so what we're trying to do in here, we taking a house, it's kind of a bungalow. We want to take the second story out because it's got a short ceiling. And we want to make it a full colonial. And at the same time is we want to renovate the downstairs and we want to, get it up to date and make it look a little bit nicer. On an existing foundation, because it's more than 50% renovation, is going to be considered as a new house, and we have to comply into the setback. And on one side, it's about 1.6
So
inch.
we've got on the front setback and on the screen, the left side, we're both at 24.8 for the front setback and 4.8 for the side setback, where we're 25 feet and 5 feet setback. So that's what the variances that we're looking for is that 0.2 feet or 1.667 inches.
Would you mind stating your name?
Oh, yeah. My name is Seth Hart. I'm living on Borgman at 13329. I'm the one that prepared the drawings that are in front of you.
Okay, well, thank you for kicking us off. Now we can get some context from the staff. Hank, you want to
Sure.
frame it out for us?
Basically, and what I'd like to do is, if it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, at this point, is I'll go through the criteria that are necessary. They certainly should, because they haven't addressed any of them.
Okay.
They certainly should address them, but I'll kick it off.
Okay.
Maybe that gives them an opportunity to hear what we're talking about, to see and maybe address that. And it may or may not help their position, but they should have the opportunity to do so. So what we're looking at here is a variance for a fairly small amount. The question becomes is can they and could they have complied with the zoning ordinance and the variances for dimensional, they're required for a dimensional variance. So when you have a dimensional variance, you have 4 criteria that you have to meet. So the interesting part about this is that this house here, they're tearing the house down for practical purposes, complete on the first floor inside, they're leaving the outside walls and the foundation for this. And they're putting a whole second floor on this. So what they're not doing is that they're not going all the way with the demo and they're not taking out the foundation. They want to stay and build on the existing foundation. The existing foundation is non-conforming. Had they done nothing to this house, the house would have been legal non-conforming. So the difference between that and this is that once they crossed over the 50% threshold, we, at the planning commission level, had to treat it as a new house. So it has to come here because there's nothing, it doesn't meet the setback requirements. So when you take a look at this, and I'll go through and I'll show it to you, but I'm going to address the standards one at a time. 1, special or unique conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, and which are not generally applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. So since it's over 50% and it's considered a new house, there's kind of a conundrum there because the special or unique conditions are because they didn't necessarily go all the way and remove the foundation of the house when they were demoing it, or when they're going to demo it. I don't believe they've started anything on the house yet. I may be wrong.
No, we haven't.
But So that's the first criteria. And the owner, developers indicated that this house is going to be resold, which is fine, but the existing house as it was non-conforming. So, again, except for the foundation and the existing exterior walls, the house is going to, or they would prefer the house to remain in the same space. So that's one of the things, and that's the first standard. Second, the variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. I've had no complaints to date, or no communications on the house, none adverse certainly. It's unlikely that this would be detrimental. However, whenever you add a full second story, it affects light, air, and views, which has been addressed by the Planning Commission, so that isn't something that you'll be considering for it. The only thing that you would consider that for is that if it's close enough to the other property, and granting the variance will cause damage to the exterior, to the other properties by virtue of it being so close. In this case, because it's not a huge variance, it's unlikely that that would be the case, but I still have to put it out there. 3, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. This went before the Planning Commission to be reviewed as a new house, as over 50% was being demolished. And as a new house, it had to meet all the criteria of a new house, including setbacks. The plan was subsequently passed on to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the front and side yard variances, and the house could have been completely demolished, but the choice was to save maybe some cost, and some effort, from the owner and developer, and a conscious decision was made not to demolish the home. What you have to find is that the issue is not self-created on that order, and the project could have been designed to comply. The front and side could have been stepped in over the existing roofs and foundations so that it would sit back from that, and it wouldn't have had to have any variances. The foundation could have been removed and set to code, as this was viewed as a new house anyway. With this one in particular, we'll leave them to their proofs.
What did you mean by that when you said that we'll leave them to their proofs?
The thing is that they have to prove that to you. In order for you to be satisfied with criteria 3, that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, they have to convince you that this isn't self-created.
Okay.
Okay? And then in 4, which is the last criteria for this, a literal interpretation of the provision of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. In this particular case, it's an R1D zone district, under the terms of this ordinance, and that the variance is the minimum necessary. Again, this one is difficult as the use is not affected. There's no use variance or no use problem. With single-family residential, it's going to be single-family residential. There's no question as to what he's putting there is going to be a more significant house than what's there now. But as difficult as the use is, or as difficult as the house is, and what it is, the rights were not meant to exacerbate nonconformity. So what is exacerbating a nonconformity? When you add to the nonconformity. If the house was less than 50%, they would be able to go straight up, straight back on the side. And that wouldn't, as long as they didn't come closer to the lot line, they would be the same. If you take a look at the drawing over here that we have on the survey from Tom Northrup, you see it's 4.8 here, it's 4.8 here, which tells you that it's not exaggerating or it's not exacerbating the nonconformity. It's the same as what it was, but it's nonconforming because it's 4'8" and it's not 5 feet. So the issue with that becomes it's straight back, straight up, straight back. If it was an addition, they could do it. But because they're doing over 50% of the house, that's why it's here on that. And then also for the front, where it's over and it's 24.8, and they'll be building in the area that's 24.8. The problem with that is that it doesn't say straight up, straight back for the front. It doesn't include the front in that. So that's one of the things that would have had to been here no matter what. If it was an addition and they were building straight up over that, it would have had to come here anyway. But it would have been for that variance and not the other one. If it was an addition rather than if it was considered a new house. So that's kind of where you're at with this. If you have, you can see off the back where they have first and second story additions off the back. Again, the substance of the plan is approved by the Planning Commission. What you're looking at is the dimensional variances for the setback for the front and the dimensional variance for the setback on the side. So, if there's any questions that you have, I put a couple sample motions together for you. One positive, one negative, so that you can see what you might be looking at either way. Also included in your packet was a letter from Mark Youssef, who's here. So, describing what he has and what he wants to do. So, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, what I would suggest is to let them maybe take a look and maybe address the 4 criteria that I've just done and see if they can satisfy you on the 4 criteria. And if that's the case, then you would follow your normal procedure and call for a motion.
Right, so we can, getting a little feedback, hopefully it's not.
To start with point number 1, I would assume that based on the ages of the home around on either side of the property, that they probably do conform to their setbacks just based on that they've had seemingly some type of addition or some type of work done in the past. And so we are in a unique situation where we're just that 0.2 feet over on both side and front setback. And I imagine it's not necessarily unique to the city of Huntington Woods, but unique to maybe right where we are. That's, of course, without seeing any of the other surveys.
I don't understand what you just meant. Unique to where we are.
So unique to Borgman, this address, 10024.
I mean, you're on a house on Borgman, and it's unique for that specific spot.
I believe, I'm speaking to that I would imagine that the other homes in the direct area.
But can
across
you
the
tell
street-
us, sir, whether or not you're dissimilarly or similarly situated to people who are your neighbors in that area?
Similarly situated.
So it's not unique.
Well,
Okay,
the
sorry.
front, okay, we can keep going.
Yeah.
We'll have questions and we'll deliberate.
And similarly, but I would, maybe it's unsimilar that they're not past the setback line. But when we're talking about 0.2 feet, it's kind of hard when you're looking down the street without seeing something in print like this to know, is that house 2 inches forward or 2 inches back, and fall in line or not fall in line. So that's why I said it's similar, but it's, it's not dissimilar that we're like 2 feet over the line. It's similar that we're within I would imagine, a reasonable amount of space that wouldn't be detrimental to the surrounding area. With that said, the same type of thing is, I don't believe that 0.2 feet would be detrimental to the adjacent property where we're over, because once again, the plans as they are would be for us to not dig out the existing foundations, move them over to 2 inches, which would require a whole bunch of backfill and other types of systems to create a solid foundation for the house for moving 2 inches. And I would believe that that would probably impact the neighbor more, because you'd have to get larger equipment in there to be on top of their driveway. Practical difficulty for number 3, obviously, Mark bought the house. We did not necessarily see a survey prior to buying the house, so we had no idea that it was a non-conforming structure. And obviously with the idea to do the renovations for the home, that's when we discovered that there is the non-conforming issue.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I do this for a living, and I always go up. I've never had an issue going up on any city that I've ever worked on. So when I bought this, I never thought to take it the extra mile to see if I'm on setback that will block me from going up. So this was all new, you know what I mean? Since we have an existing foundation and we keep in the existing walls, I've never had an issue going up on an existing wall instead of tearing down the whole house and start from scratch, you know what I mean? Over 2 inches,
And then for number 4, we're not looking to go over further than is there. We're going, as mentioned, we're going straight up. We're not going to make it worse. We don't want to make it worse for the neighbors. We just want it to look better for the neighbors and the community at large. And happy to answer any questions that I can possibly answer.
Okay, well, yeah, we can, we'll take, we can deliberate and ask you questions now, and then we'll open it up to the public. Just so I can, just to clarify if I can, has any of the demo, the houses, it's, if you
As
drove, okay, that's what I thought, that's what I thought, I just wanted to clarify. So it is just as is, and now you've been through the planning commission, and now you're here to see if
For
you can get
the February Planning Commission meeting, we have conditional approval from the Planning Commission, assuming that you guys grant us permission,
Okay,
or approval, sorry.
right, okay, so we can open it up for,
Public comment? When's public comment?
You might want to have public comment first.
Sure. We can do that.
Because that also gives you the opportunity to discuss any issues raised by the public, should there be any.
certainly. So we'll now open the floor to any members of the public who want to comment on the proposal. Hearing none, we'll close public comment, and the members of the ZBA can ask questions. If you have questions for the applicant. Go ahead.
Couple of questions. I'm frankly torn on this,
Yeah.
Mr. Youssef. Because, I appreciate the investment in the community. This stuff is so small, but nevertheless, the criteria are the criteria. And has this house already been, has the modified plan already been sold to a prospective buyer? Or is it a spec house?
spec house.
Okay, got it. I assume that there's no reasonable way you could accomplish what you want to accomplish and keep it under the 50% square footage modification.
It just wouldn't make sense to have a beautiful upstairs with the way the layout is right now on the downstairs, it's hideous. It
know.
doesn't make sense.
I've been there.
Then you get.
I've been in the house.
Oh, you've been in that house?
Yeah,
Okay, so you
yeah,
have
a long
beautiful-
time ago.
You're gonna have a beautiful upstairs and the downstairs just wouldn't make sense.
Okay, but it wouldn't make sense from a marketing point of view.
I don't think we'll sell. I doubt.
Okay, all right, but understand, at least as I view it,
Yeah.
our job isn't to make this property saleable.
No.
Okay,
that-
I mean,
100%.
that's,
Yeah.
I appreciate the investment and what you're putting into this
Right.
and the complications involved and the expectations involved.
Yeah.
But it's not our job to consider how many square feet you can sell.
And it's-
Okay.
It's not just that. The house, when it was listed for sale, is set on the market for like 3-4 months. And every time I ask people, I even ask their neighbors, they're like, it's hideous.
Okay,
You know?
I think the seller's name.
Outside of hideous, when you go into the home, it's, I believe it's 1950s, 1960s
Yeah.
construction, where it was much more common to have smaller
Yeah.
more smaller rooms than
Okay,
today's.
I'm not gonna argue with design,
Yeah.
because that isn't our bailiwick here.
Right, I was just trying to say, like,
Yeah, okay.
The idea is to create a value.
Seller's name was Steve, wasn't it, something?
So,
Seth? Okay, all right. All right, got it. You already indicated that you didn't know about this encroachment problem when you bought the house.
no.
Okay, did you check any plans, any schematics at all? you know, I mean, because right now we've got something dated September 24, which I assume is yours.
Yes.
Okay, did you check any drawings before that?
No, but before I bought it, I stopped by and I asked the city, and I believe I spoke to Hank, and this issue, honestly, it never came up. And that's how I bought it,
Okay.
Maybe I didn't think too much of it, he didn't think too much of it.
I'm gonna stop right here because I just wanna point something out. Until the survey was presented, the city would have
Nobody
no
knew.
idea.
That is correct.
No idea.
Hank, is there any suggestion that there was movement in the foundation
No,
after it was put in?
no,
Okay,
not that we're aware of.
okay.
So, hey, let me ask you this, there's no city record showing how this was plotted on that piece of property then?
It was probably put on a piece of property and the error was done at the time that it was built, and I'm gonna go with, is this a 40s or 50s bungalow?
I believe it's 50s, I'll say.
Yeah, it'd be
Okay.
like early 50s, so right now realistically it's 70 years old.
Okay,
Do I have records of it? Probably, but they don't do as-built surveys back then, so I would have no record of it showing that it was off until we were presented with this particular document to review.
okay, you know, I mean, the only condition I'm worried about, and the one you've spent the most time in, is number 3, do not result from the actions of the applicant. And the way I interpret that, that includes what he bought into, because whether it was reasonable or not, getting out there with a tape measure would have informed him that this was a problem. And if he bought into it that way, my initial reaction would be, okay, you didn't do your homework on this, and you're stuck with it the way it is. On the other hand, we've heard nothing from the neighbors at all.
No.
We've got approval from the planning commission. I've looked at the plans, not that that's our concern, but it looks like a perfectly fine house that would be a substantial improvement to the neighborhood. So, I guess I'm going to wait to hear from the other members of the commission before I make a final decision on this.
So my question is, and thanks guys for being so candid with us about what happened. Very much appreciated. Let's assume we were to say no, you didn't do your due diligence, you should have, we have to honor the rules. I don't see any way how you can satisfy at least number 3 on the 4 criteria. I think 3 of them are actually pretty iffy, if you want my opinion.
Sure.
And by asking this question, I don't mean to suggest I'm going in this direction. But I would like to know, if we were to say no, you can't do this, the rules are so clear and you didn't do your due diligence, don't satisfy the criteria, what would you do with that property?
I'm gonna have 2 options. Option A, we came up with a remodeling plan, but I haven't really looked into it deeply to see if it will actually make me break even on it or not. Option 2 is take a loss.
And taking a loss would mean building up and
No,
just,
try to sell it as is, and they're probably gonna sit and hope and pray to God someone else will buy it, and then back to square one.
and Hank,
Yeah, there is another option.
what's the other option?
The other option would be to set the second floor back so that it's 2 inches in from the right side, from the left side, and step it back so that it's in, and the walls are beyond the plane of the setback.
Oh.
That allows them to keep the side setback, it allows them to keep the front setback, and the new construction is no longer in the setbacks, and the problem goes
In-
away.
Okay, that's very important information in my mind. How much would that change, in your mind, the design that these gentlemen want to,
It wouldn't change the design, but it may change some of the engineering, because when you move a wall back, you're moving the wall back on joists. So depending on how much bearing the joists have and how much it is, they may have to put sleepers on the wall, which actually become bearing on the floor below in order to carry the weight. So it may mean that there's a little additional cost to it, But it depends on how they're done, but there would be an engineer involved in that. But it could be done.
So Hank, I'd like you, before I stop, I don't see how we've heard any proofs to suggest that criteria number 1, criteria number 3, and criteria number 4 have been satisfied. I can see what you're saying about criteria number 2, but I did not hear from the gentleman, and again, thank you for your candor, anything that suggests this is a special or unique conditions in the neighborhood. Is that wrong?
I'm going to answer that a little bit differently. I'm going to answer that it's up to them to convince you, and it wouldn't be up to me to affirm your position. I don't get a vote. You have to. If you haven't heard what you need to hear, then your decision is based on that you haven't heard what you needed to hear to make this work for you.
Yes.
Some of you may find that you have heard sufficient things, and it's not that big a deal, not that big a deal. So, you're going to have to decide what it is in the strict letter of the code.
So I'll put it out there just for others' consideration. When I see criteria number 1, and as I've interpreted it over the years, there has to be something special, unique about the lot or the circumstances that make it unusual, given the neighbors or the neighborhood. And I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that it's an odd lot or that there's some, aspect to this property that makes them in a particularly unfortunate, unique situation. I think there was actually an admission to that effect. Number 2, I personally think perhaps has been satisfied. Number 3, I think it's agreed that it hasn't been satisfied because, this is a mistake presumably by their own mission of their own creation because they didn't do the due diligence as Sheldon, I think, elicited, and as they candidly acknowledged, and thank you for your candor again. And then number 4, maybe I don't see how a literal interpretation of the ordinances would deprive the rights, the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed for the property. I don't see what's being deprived. There is no right to build up. So I don't see 1, 2, and 4 being satisfied. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it.
Let's open it up to other board members if you, for questions primarily, but also if you are, weighing things, you can certainly.
Okay, so I didn't understand this when I first read this, but the setback only applies to the new construction?
That is correct.
And it appears that there is
It applies to the new construction if they're keeping it as an addition. So if they're stepping it back, if he changes a wall or something like that, that's not going to change that. I would still call that an addition. But if he's changing all the walls and he's gutting it to the studs on the first floor, as he's indicated to the planning commission that they were planning on doing, there's no way that's not over the 50% of the house is being remodeled. So in order to make this possible, and I don't know whether they would entertain that or not, that's not up to us, or me anyway. But they could do one of two things. They could keep the walls and everything in place. They could try to figure out a way engineering-wise how to just step in the second floor a little bit on the one wall and a little bit on the other wall, and then they can have theirs. The rest of the house can sit over the existing walls because that doesn't matter. That's not non-conforming.
Hank, that takes them out of the 50%. Sorry, Joe.
It would take them out of the 50% criteria if they went ahead and they didn't gut the whole first floor. So while they're talking about the rooms are small, they're talking about the way that the kitchen's laid out or this, if they wanted to take out a wall or they wanted to take out something for that, that's fine. But when you take the whole floor and go to the studs, there's no way that's not over 50%.
Okay, so that wouldn't solve even with the setback. If they decided to demo the whole first floor, they're still over the 50%.
If they decide to demo the whole first floor, they're still over the 50%. What would take them back on the other side of that 50% is if they didn't do that. Then the zoning board of appeals could find that, okay, so they've modified the plan. The plan is still the same, but they can go straight up, straight back if it's an addition, meaning they do less or a minimal amount where we can actually look at it and say, you didn't touch over 50% of this, then this will be counted as an addition. The ZBA can say, fine. For the planning commission, they don't necessarily care because they're getting the same house they looked at last
Okay,
month
that was
anyway.
that was my next question.
Yeah.
Again, sorry, Joe.
It will not have to go
But they
back.
would, so that is something that could get signed off administratively.
It could get signed off administratively because you will have determined that to be the case. And it's like with the zoning board of appeals, the unique thing is that,
You've been doing
It's
this
okay
way
if
too
you-
long, Bill.
it's okay if you say it is.
Sorry, Joe,
So there is a possible engineering solution, a new layout solution that could meet the requirements.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
So now it seems like everyone's convinced that, you know, you're keeping your foundation, and if you just push everything in 2 inches or whatever for your top, then you're fine. And then you can still gut everything and you're good to go. What, like, to me, when we first got here, it felt like everyone wanted you to move your foundation that's been existing for 70 years, and that felt really outrageous. I imagined, like you were saying, the neighbors, it's gonna be all on their property, this is gonna cost you tens of thousands of dollars that were not anticipated, because who really would have noticed that difference? You bought a home as is, it's existing, and to me, that does make it unique in that no one knew, right? Until we
Right.
got this survey. So now there is this alternative that it sounds like everything can be just what you wanted, except you have to push in your top
It's
floor.
not just that, it's gonna change the look of the house when you go 2 inches in. Imagine having like band around it.
Outside of the
Sure.
look of it, I would argue that engineering wise, it's not really as simple, because the way
That's what I was gonna-
force comes down, it makes a lot of sense when you go straight in a line, and when you start setting back things in, well, that still has to come down to the existing footings. And if I'm 2 inches in and I have the entire roof load and the second floor load coming down over thin air, or trying to sister it out and double up on the inside, go from 2x4s to 2x6 walls where you would still have the existing exterior face, underneath that floor plate is still thin air unless I somehow pour a 2-inch concrete wall on an existing, I'm going to assume
But
8-inch
What about the
CMU
footings?
wall
Unless there's
down to
spread
the
footing.
spread footing.
Unless there's what?
Unless there's a spread footing and it's block base.
But assuming, making any type of assumption there is a fool's errand
Sure.
and dangerous for
I mean, look,
everyone
yeah.
involved.
Y'all assumed some stuff and that was dangerous, right?
Right,
No,
so
I
like,
hear you.
if we assume that there is a proper spread footing, that they poured spread footings the same way they do now,
Then as they do now, right.
70 years ago, is dangerous for us all to assume. And the way that that load sits, it would, structurally speaking, I don't think that's a really prudent answer. Maybe it's been done before, but I would imagine it's much more heavily involved than it needs to be, including digging new foundations.
Right, I mean, when you bought the home, your intention, I don't care who lives there, but your intention was to remodel it. It wasn't conducive the way it was for modern life. So you looked at it from, your viewpoint, and you were like, okay, we can clear out the bottom floor and add this top and make it what it is, and there was no, sorry, were you saying something?
go ahead.
Did I hear something? Okay, I'm just hallucinating.
Long day.
Yeah. And the way before you purchased the home, you had to, place value on each of the things, right? Like, this is the amount to purchase it, this is the amount that I can put into it to have it be what you thought the land was worth value-wise.
Correct.
So adding, these engineering feats, or taking away the foundation walls and repouring it and doing it all over again, that changes everything.
Correct.
So I hear where you're coming from.
See, I've been doing this 15 plus years.
Yeah.
I've never heard
neighborhood
of
is
city that
unique.
changes setbacks. So when I bought it,
Right, you
how
would
would I
assume-
think, you know what I'm saying? I've never heard of that.
I don't know if they changed or this was just not
Or was
conforming. This
exact from the
was,
beginning.
yeah,
So
exactly. So when this was,
never came up
correct,
throughout my whole career, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But,
It's-
but you had this survey was done in September, and you didn't
Correct.
even take a look at modifying your plan to meet the requirement?
You can't modify the plan
How?
because
It's
your load
already
bearings on the
existing.
exterior walls.
I'm saying to you, there is an engineering solution to that, though.
Yes, soon. I would like to see an engineer try to design
You
this.
should engage one.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's not the city's
because-
responsibility.
Because when we asked, you have to do a footings, and there's a drain tile around it too, so that
Drain
has.
tiles inside.
Yeah, well, you put the footings inside if you wanna push it in.
okay, I think we should try to
Okay, I'm not.
have a little, yeah, Hank, I appreciate, as always, we appreciate your, you know,
Thoughts?
your thoughts and your wisdom on this. Anyone we haven't heard from yet before we go back to Andy? Well, we have.
I mean,
we got
I'm torn too. I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know about other engineering stuff and all that it's either we're gonna, I don't know that it quite meets any of the, 1, 3, or 4, but at the same time, we're talking about a few inches, right? Like I think that's where I'm stuck.
Yeah.
We're talking about, 2 to 3 inches, but it doesn't meet the letter of what we're, so I think that's the challenge with this one, so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in the middle of this as well, and I understand that you bought the house this way, this has been like this for 70 years. However, on the other token, there's an engineering solution to this that would meet the criteria. So that's where I'm torn. And I'm not, it sounds like, maybe I'm wrong, I'm reading that you're not wanting to look at that engineering solution.
I think the engineering solution that it does exist is cost prohibitive, is where it boils down to. The two options are really removing those two walls of foundation and moving them in 2 inches so that everything lines up. Or there's still digging out new foundations, adding in new steel posts on next to the existing foundation with new spread footings underneath that, so tearing apart the entire basement, which was not planned on being touched. Putting in new steel or wood support beams to hold up those joists, then on the first floor, adding in a 2x2 on the floor plate, and then 2x6s to reinforce, and then being able to step in 2 inches. That's not to speak of the elevation issues of having a flat spot on 2 sides of a house, and trying to contend with
Yeah,
that for
the
long.
engineering solution is inelegant at best.
And so we're all trying to tease this out.
Absolutely.
I do not think it's a close call, and I'll tell you my thought experiment, which is sort of the nature of the ZBA. If a family came and was living in this house and said, we're a growing family and we want to have a modern floor plan and have enough space for ourselves, even though that's not the criteria, we would have approved this 20 minutes ago. I'm speaking for myself.
why do you say that? I don't know why you say that.
Because I've been on the ZBA for years, and to quote Andy Doctoroff, this is de minimis. This is such a marginal variance that it would be, and we have someone here, whether he's gonna live there with 3 generations of his family for 40 years, or he's gonna sell it, 2 weeks after it's done, this is a house that no one was biting on, that needs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of work, and it's de minimis. It is I think exactly why we're here, to say you have the house as it exists. I think it is a unique circumstance that it was such a marginal nonconformity that no one would have noticed. No one did until you did, so now we're here. And that denying this or making them come up with some kind of Rube Goldberg solution to it would be perverse. And that this is a minimum necessary ask to do the thing that will certainly be the least disruptive to the neighbors compared to the alternatives. And then, get a family into this house at the stepped up property taxes.
Hey,
gonna say that too.
can I present, and I'm not saying where my vote is, because I'm still undecided, essentially, but why I don't agree with your straightforward analysis. I think there are certain things that are known. And one of the things that is known is that it is not a large variance, or they're not asking for large variances. That's true. But other things are known too, is that I believe most builders would have done a survey to see before purchase whether or not there was a need for a variance and taken that into account. That was not done. That is a self-inflicted issue that creates some amount of culpability on the home buyer's part. It was just a lack of due diligence that I think is presumably common. People can refute that. The second thing that I believe is known is that at least some of the criteria are not satisfied. I don't believe respectfully that this is a unique situation, because I don't think, as I understand the variances, that's what it means. It means basically comparing yourself to others, not whether that's a small variance. That's not within the meaning, I believe, of what constitutes unique. So I don't think, in my mind, there's any question that the variances are not, that the criteria are not satisfied. What's not known, and what we're, I think, kind of grappling with, is how difficult would the engineering solution be? We've certainly heard, and no reason to cast any aspersions on your credibility, that it would be tough, it would require a whole bunch of heavy lifting, additional costs, screw everything up. But that's tonight and tonight only. We don't know that, and there's been no effort made to demonstrate one way or the other how difficult that lift would be, how expensive it would be. We're just hearing this for the first time. There's no real written or other evidence that suggests that in fact is the case. And the last thing that I do believe is known is that, and this is my personal opinion, notwithstanding the inconvenience or the cost this might cause, is that these ordinances matter and that they can't be pushed aside lightly. And I'm worrying that we're doing this when there wasn't a due diligence and we haven't heard what I consider to be definitive statements as to how big of a problem this would be. So I guess my question is, I don't know whether this is a good solution, is rather than voting it up or down at this time, is there time for more due diligence? Is there time to see whether or not an engineering solution, and to have these gentlemen discuss with Hank whether it would be prohibitively expensive or inconvenient or disruptive or even non-economical, which I don't think is necessarily relevant. So we're not deciding, like I feel we're going to decide, if not in an informational vacuum, where I don't know the facts well enough to be confident in my vote. When I care about these ordinances and I care about the criteria, and I care about not blowing past them, without the criteria being able to be satisfied in my mind. So it's like, that's my position. And so I guess, Hank, to you, how difficult would it be for you to have additional conversations after they do homework to assess?
I have conversations with them all the time. I'm fine with having conversations. The only thing is that they would need time to engage a structural engineer to see what it is. Because realistically, if they're looking at 2 inches, the spread footing, if it's a brick home, typically it's 24 inches. There's 12-inch block on top of it. It forms a brick ledge at the top. I don't know if it's block or poured. I'm going to go with it's probably block.
Block.
So is there an opportunity to put another 2-inch sleeper on the wall or something like that? That's something that an engineer is going to have to do. And I would, as I'm sure they would defer to the engineer, but that's nothing where you have to tear up the floor in order to make that assessment. An engineer could do that structurally and give them an idea.
Why isn't that let's table this for a month or to the next meeting or whenever you can get this done and then make a more informed decision? Why isn't that a solution?
Well, it's up to them if they want
Yeah.
to, if they want a
To be
decision
honest
or
with you,
not.
Yeah.
It cost me $3,500 a month to have this house. I know this is not your guys. I'm in it for 6 months. I just don't have more money to put into it at this point. So it's either gonna go right back on the market and take a loss,
Okay.
or
If
it's
you're-
gonna
Yeah,
move forward.
no, that-
Like, it gotten to the point, it is draining me,
Yeah, I understand that,
you know
sir.
what I mean?
I feel like I'm making a decision without enough information that makes me comfortable with the decision.
And even if we go to engineering, just to let you know, I deal with them all day, every day. You're looking about a month and a half for them, for somebody to make a decision. Then I'm back in here for another month, and I don't have that much
Yeah.
money left. in
We,
the-
we
in the
met here
pot.
tonight because you wanted a special meeting.
Correct.
But I don't feel, I personally, I'm not speaking for anyone else, of course, I don't feel comfortable with hurrying this up without a full understanding of whether or not there is a reasonable engineering solution. That's just where my head is. I'm not speaking for anyone else, of course. And that could be a minority of one.
Any other questions or?
I guess my question would be whether or not the chair would entertain, I don't know whether it would pass or not, a motion to table this. If that's acceptable to the applicant. It's not-
I don't think it is. I think it's their prerogative to have an up or down vote
Okay.
tonight. And, right, if they wanted to, and we've done that plenty of times, where they say, can we come back in a month?
Okay,
You're here asking for
just want
2
it
inches on
clearly on the table.
2 sides of the house, and I think we're prepared to entertain a motion. If somebody wants to make one? Or I can.
You should let
Can I?
somebody else.
Okay, I should not. Oh, fair.
I'll make a motion to grant the appeal.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we can open it back up I think at this point, if there is more discussion before we put it to.
One question,
Of
Hank?
course.
Yes.
The zoning board need not determine that all 4 criteria are met. Do they? They
You
need,
have to be satisfied that the 4 criteria for dimensional variance are meant to your satisfaction.
each of them.
Yes, the subjective portion of that is to your satisfaction before you vote.
Yeah, I
So if you
understand.
believe that they've met their burden of proof on this, then you should vote in favor of that. If you do not, you should vote no.
So you can, we have proposed language here, if you want to read it or just make the motion for this as written.
Let me make, I want to make this clear. So we would have to find that there are special, unique circumstances, that it would not be injurious to the neighborhood. I don't think that's a problem in this particular instance. That it would deprive the applicant of other use, of use common among
Right.
similar
And number 3.
territories, yeah.
Self-created.
Okay, and that
Right.
there are special, we would have to find all 4 of
You
those.
would have to find all 4, and just to be fair, before you decide on this, I think if you're taking a look at the area of standard 4, and if you're having trouble with that, you could determine that it would deprive them of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. You could determine that, look, there's a lot of colonials in this area. There's a lot of square footage that they can gain by having a colonial. It would be similar to other areas in the, other houses in the area. I don't know how many, and again, it's not the city's burden to prove this, but you could take a look at it that way, that it would deprive them of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance, which does guarantee them a certain amount of square footage, which does guarantee them, some architectural latitude, which has already been approved by the planning commission. You could take that tact with 4 if that gets you by. I don't know, again,
I would just observe that we.
throwing everything out.
Yeah, and that we, in my recollection, rarely itemize and articulate each of the 4 criteria in the motion, right? We're here to review this holistically. I guess each one of us needs to decide if if there's if this fails on one or more of them, then, you
Understood.
we're each,
I just
we're
want
each
it
here
clear
individually.
to-
So
to-
you have a motion as presented, or we can argue.
I just
phrase
wanted
it
to be
differently.
as
No,
picky,
no,
as
that's-
picky as possible.
Of course,
But-
of course, of course.
But I'll stand by my motion, notwithstanding the explanation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So we have we have a second, we can deliberate further before we,
I get my other question just came to me is, are the neighbors aware of the variance?
Everybody within a 300 lineal feet of the house.
Everybody was notified,
Everybody's
nobody
notified.
came,
Yes.
okay.
A copy of the notice that was mailed is in your packet.
okay, well, if there are
I'll
no,
just say one thing, and I'm not trying to advocate in any direction. I think I sense where this is going. But the reason why I can't vote to support Sheldon's motion is for the simple reason that I don't think they did their due diligence. And I don't think we know whether or not there is an engineering solution that's reasonable. I would like to know that. I think we're moving quickly. I certainly appreciate, sir, the drain of $305 a month, which I just can't personally take into account when I'm deciding this thing. So it's like, yeah, I feel for you, but I just can't go there, and I just don't think the criteria. That said, I do recognize your position, of course, that at the end of the day, the variances being requested are not significantly large. But I just can't bring myself to do it, given how I interpret these rules and the due diligence issue that really, and the lack of information, that just bothers me.
that is
I think
fair.
I think we're hurrying up, and I don't feel good about it.
Well, we have all night.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna, it's not gonna get solved. I'm talking about today.
Right.
It's not gonna get solved unless they get an engineer to look at this.
Right, and,
Carrying costs,
it's
not.
Yeah.
yeah, that is,
Not our issue.
Right,
Never-
but it's
never
not
asked.
today.
I mean, we have certainly, we look at each case.
No
individually,
unreasonable result here.
And there's no,
unreasonable
right,
result.
it's not precedent, and nor our previous decisions. My experience has been that there are lots of non-conforming, legal, lawful, existing non-conforming structures, and that is, it's different from the shape of the lot or something that's very specific to the geography, but that's why we're here, right? This is an equitable consideration, and I think that looking at this holistically and considering the alternative of, oh, well, if you left a bunch of interior walls, which we don't care about, right? Like there's no variance related to, how big the powder room is or, how much, the bay window in the kitchen. Those are, you've made it through the gauntlet with the planning commission. We're here now to consider what the part or parts that didn't quite fit within it. So we have a motion, unless there are any other comments or questions.
For the
Yes.
record, I just want to point out that you have 7 members here. You need 4 affirmative votes for the motion in order for the project to pass.
Okay, so we have, any final thoughts before we put it to a vote? So, all in favor of the motion as presented and seconded, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed?
Aye.
So 4 in favor, 3 opposed.
Pass.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
So.
Guys, you understand the discussion? Not like personal or anything?
We just, as a matter of course, you guys are all set. Go get
Are we good?
Yeah, go have a drink here, of your choice.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for your candor.
Of course. And we will now, we'll open the floor back up for public participation one more time per our agenda. Hearing none,
Thank you.
I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm sorry, I stopped paying attention.
Good evening. Good.